Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Daniel Childs here. Hope you're having a brilliant Tuesday wherever you are watching or listening to this. In today's show, we're going to be reacting to some of your comments in recent days to recent shows, whether that be the Liverpool game or before that. Really enjoy doing these, and there's some detailed comments and thoughts to break down and give you my reaction to. If you are new around here, check out the recent Chelsea content. I did an almost 30-minute review, which by my standards for match reviews is one of the longest, if not the longest I've ever done, I think, for a Chelsea game since doing this. So please go and check it out for the Liverpool game. I know a lot of you enjoyed it, have watched it, have commented and interacted with it. Thank you. And if you enjoy that longer style of content, please do let me know in the comments below. And I'd like to get some feedback ahead of the new season, how we're going to approach things heading into the Club World Cup and beyond. So please like, subscribe, share the content around with friends. But let's jump into it with your comments really, and some of maybe your questions or things you wanted me to respond to. So let's start off here with Sean, who says, I've said it before, we are not a possession-based team. We play much better on the counter-attack. 35% possession, and this is in reference to the Liverpool game, and we had more shots on goal. If you look at all the games we won, we play counter-attacking football. We have the players that suit counter-attacking football, not possession-based football. And I want to combine this with another comment because we'll get to this, right? There's been a broader conversation since Chelsea have started winning games again about whether Chelsea are following Maresca's style of play. Are they rejecting Maresca's style of play? And what it means maybe for the future of how Chelsea are going to look. So this was also brought up by the Demon at Maresca has said multiple times he does not want to play more transitional football, but he thinks we don't have the personnel yet. Our defence, especially our goalkeeper, makes it very difficult and shaky. He wants more control and his team to keep the ball because it stabilises the team, and he doesn't trust the personnel at the back. Plus, our decision making on the transition is very questionable. You cannot play in chaos when we have Sanchez in goal and our centre backs. It's a recipe for disaster. So kind of 2 points there in terms of the way Chelsea play at their best versus why maybe we play a different way. And I do think there is truth in both. I think it'd be flippant to dismiss either point. However, what I will say instantly is I do think it's just disingenuous. And I made this point extensively on the Liverpool review because, as you know, if you're new, maybe you don't know this, but I've been quite critical of Enzo Maresca's style of play. I've been quite critical of the performances over recent months, which, to be fair, I'm not in a minority. I think you're in a minority, really, if you've been looking at the last 3 months before basically the Fulham game and have been overjoyed by what you've watched. I do think that is a minority point of view just based on what I gauge. But I said, listen, however we got to those wins, the win against Fulham, which was massive, the win against, particularly the Fulham game was kind of hard to judge because it was so chaotic at the end, but especially the wins against Everton, the win in the Conference League, and mainly, of course, the win against Liverpool on Sunday. Whatever way we got there, that's a big win, and I think it's just disingenuous and, just dishonest to not credit the head coach for constructing that style of play. It was actually Maresca who said post-game that Chelsea were forced to adapt in the game against Liverpool because they had more of the ball than Maresca would have liked. I think that's a positive. I think you got to give credit to Maresca for saying that because one of the things that people have, I think, rightly and legitimately questioned is his inability to adapt to maybe circumstance, the players he has, the nature of the way the Premier League season has kind of unfolded with Chelsea looking very stale, very predictable. I don't think, as someone who's been critical of him, when he does admit to adapting and it works in a big way, it's fair to then turn around and go, well, that's a problem as well. No, it's not, because I think that's a sign, hopefully, of him developing as a head coach. There was a lot of chatter pre-game because he did an extensive interview with Sky Sports where he kind of referenced what that second comment the Demon responded to of why Chelsea haven't been more transitional, which people wanted him to, but that's because maybe he doesn't have the faith or the evidence that the squad is good enough to play like that. I think it's a bit of a balance. I do firmly believe that Chelsea are a very good transitional football team. I think Chelsea are a great counter-attacking team. I firmly believe that. I think the numbers at the start of the season, I remember The Athletic did a piece about it and we looked at it in depth on the show. Chelsea were some of the best in terms of that. I just think our style of the composition of the squad, I think some of the players we have And sure, you can, write off that all players look good when they have space and time, obviously. But I think the speed of some of our attackers, I think the way we were built and constructed and worked quite hard from Pochettino last year to get to a point where we were able to play in that chaos, and kind of the fitness levels of the team seemed to get better. We seemed to grow it the longer games went on. And in seeing that kind of grow and get better with some new tweaks from Maresca in the first half of this season, I thought was a positive. I'm not going to sit here and blindly tell you that chaos doesn't come with some risk. I think my hope is that there is a balance, there is an understanding that with players like Cole Palmer, there is a bit of freedom to be given to him. With players that we do have, when you have Lavia in the team, you seem to have a team that can play a little bit more intricately, even against teams like Everton. I mean, even against Everton, who are not like Liverpool, are not going to press you up. Even then, Chelsea, because of Lavia's talent on the ball and because it allowed players to get further up the pitch, Chelsea suddenly looked a little bit more intricate and a little bit more kind of intense, really, precise, quicker with their style of play, which was especially in the first half against Everton, not so much in the second half. I think that, I like the fact that Chelsea, I think Chelsea as a club, when we've worked as a football team at some of our best, is we don't really have a Chelsea style. I think the Chelsea style is kind of countercultural in the sense that we can, at times, the best Chelsea teams could play you off the park with some beautiful football, but also could scrap, also could play a counter-attacking game. That's what I want from a Chelsea team. I don't want a rigid, dogmatic kind of one tunnel vision style of football, because I don't think it works. I don't think in the English game, unless you have an insane squad, and even Man City have been forced to adapt. Liverpool are forced to adapt. Nearly every club in world football is forced to adapt based on circumstance. That's just not the way the game works. And I think just my analysis, just based on Liverpool, which was a notable day, it has to be seen as a notable day. Maybe there is some adaptation coming in, and maybe with players like Lavia returning, that's big. But I think it'd be silly to dismiss the talent he does have to play transitional football when a game opens up in that sense. However, if he is doing that, then he deserves credit. Like, if he's doing it based on what he wants and he's getting the response in performance that we did against Liverpool, that's also a positive. So it's a roundabout way of saying I just don't think it's fair to kind of narrative kind of just drill into a narrative and keep it going no matter what the evidence is in front of us. That's kind of my big thing, especially this season, is I'm team reality, team objective reality in front of us, and that if you're overly positive and then stuff starts going wrong and you're still overly positive to kind of a ridiculous extent, I find that a bit puzzling. Just in the same way, if stuff starts to go right and you're still blindly negative because you just want to be blindly negative, I'm not supportive of that either. Monochromatic Spider here says, I suspect Lavia being back is why Maresca dared to unshackle Palmer and let him do more build-up, let him take more chances. With two centre-backs and a trio of Cuckoo, Lavia and Caicedo, there's a lot of defensive talent to handle when one of the attackers lose possession. Having said that, I find it absolutely mind-boggling that there is even a debate whether Palmer is shackled when playing as a ball receiver higher up the pitch and mostly to the left. Of course he is. When has he actually been good in that role? Using him in a role tailor-made for Nkunku when Palmer is very clearly not Nkunku is obviously not the best use of Palmer. When you task a player with something they're not as good as, you'd expect a worse performance, right? Imagine if back in the day we had tried to use Hazard the same way Maresca has used Palmer, not as a creator who needs to be on the ball, but as a runner off the ball who should receive passes from Ivanovic and Kante. Imagine how much worse he'd been if he was constantly tasked to be a body in a super congested middle waiting for Willian to do the dribbly stuff and hit a cross. In my opinion, and I accept I'm both aggressive and impatient, but anyone who can watch how we've played in 2025 and not have their faith in Maresca troubled is either lily white or just not paying attention. That said, seeing us play without the mental handbrakes against Liverpool is comforting. It goes to show that the team isn't actually bad, it's just not being applied properly, and I sure hope we're not going to revert to handbrake ball the moment Lavia picks up a knock and we have to use a right back at right back. Quite extensive, but I appreciate the comment, and I do think on the Palmer thing, it's another big debate that has been had for many months now. Was Palmer being limited by the style of football? I think percentage terms, I think it definitely has some percentage level, because I have watched games where I've seen the positioning of Palmer and the positioning of other players, and sometimes screenshots, as someone who used a lot of Y Scout, you quickly appreciate how quick the game moves and how one screenshot can never quite tell you how fast players move and how quickly movement changes in a game. So just on the first point, so sometimes screenshots can be misleading, but there have absolutely been times in some of the games since Christmas where I've looked at the positioning of Chelsea's attack where Palmer's a lot deeper, Cucurella's quite high, even Enzo's quite high, and you're kind of sat there and you're looking at it and going, players kind of in the wrong positions, right? The profiling of players seems a little bit of a mess here, especially in kind of slower, more constructed build-up where Chelsea are against a deeper defence, right? And you think about how Palmer thrived last season and especially in the first half of this season. And listen, Palmer is an exceptional talent. I always backed that he would eventually return to form. But again, it's like, you know, you think back 12 months, Pochettino got a lot of credit from myself and others that, Palmer was given the freedom. For a large chunk of this season, Palmer was also playing brilliantly. He went for a really, really barren spell, and it was really horrible, right, for him and for Chelsea, because our own product massively went down because Palmer's went non-existent, especially in terms of scoring goals for quite a few months. And I think it's probably just that understanding, and Maresca's comments has actually been quite positive on this, that Maresca, I think, appreciates the talent that Cole Palmer has. And I do think there is a player responsibility point of this. Is probably just a young guy who was skyrocketed to a position probably maybe he didn't even think he'd be in, from signing from City as an academy player that wasn't getting a lot of football to being literally Chelsea's most important player in the space of a couple of months. Insanity. Like, he was treated like a rock star. He is treated like a rock star now in the current Chelsea era. And although he acts very cool, there is, probably something under there as a very young guy who has maybe been overwhelmed by that. I'm not saying that's a definite thing, but, just as a human level, like, maybe that has troubled him, and he goes through a difficult period when his team's not playing well, where he's getting criticism, where the things that were coming to him very naturally suddenly aren't, and you go through a period of not scoring, and then confidence drops, doubts creep in. This happens to nearly probably every footballer in the world, right? Like, even the greatest of all time are going to have dips, and he's come through that now, and the numbers for him, given how little time he's actually been at the club, are still absolutely insane. That goal on Sunday now puts him in the top 10 top goal scorers of all time at Chelsea Football Club, which is absolute insanity given how much he's done in a short period of time. So I think that Maresca, my hope is, again, it goes back to that first question of what Maresca ball is, right? I think that control is important at certain points, but it's also, control shouldn't be the most important thing, especially if it starts to do stupid things in your team. Like, it starts to limit some of your best attackers. If suddenly players weirdly are gaining more superiority or kind of getting into areas and being positioned higher up the pitch, when you kind of look, well, why is that guy being put there when a more natural and threatening attacker isn't? And these are the things I've questioned about Enzo Maresca, right? I don't think it's one of these things where we've started playing well, we started getting results, and you can turn around now and go, well, couldn't all you guys, you just weren't watching the game properly. No, like, Chelsea did, the way Chelsea played on Sunday is a million miles away from the Chelsea I have seen basically since Christmas. And I would argue with anyone about that, right? And sure, we can look at the influence of Lavia being a key defining part of that, but he has been injured for a long period of the season. So I don't think that means that since December, when he was kind of in and out of the team, and then not seeing him till spring is kind of just an easy excuse for Maresca. Well, he didn't have one guy, so what are you going to do? No, that for me, that's not good enough. Like, I think that's just like, it shouldn't all come down to one guy being whether your system is make or break. I think there should be a lot more to it than that. Chelsea have played some very poor teams in this bad run and haven't been good enough. So I feel that this is going to be the big debate, and the big thing going on is what Maresca's style of football looks and whether it does evolve and actually will look better after not only a full season, but also, hopefully, fingers crossed, and I don't have much faith in the sporting directors, a better transfer window. And I'm not just talking about the players we sign, the players we sell. It's also about the players we maintain. Doing the right thing with Andre Santos is kind of key in that. Doing the right thing with Georgia Petrovic and the goalkeeping department is another part of that. Making sure that Esteval Willian is properly integrated into life at Chelsea. There is so much to this summer again that I think can either elevate what has happened or downgrade it, which is my big concern. Finally here, and this is kind of another topic of kind of centre-backs, right? We've been talking about experience and whether Chelsea could go out there and sign an older centre-back. There's been many links to centre-backs over the past few weeks. And Shinya DEW here puts, we should be neck deep in for signing someone like Jonathan Tah. Free agent by the end of the season, 29 years old. In his last 6 seasons, he missed a total of 29 days, which accounts for 7 games due to injury. He obviously played a huge part in Leverkusen's invincible run last year, Champions League experience and German national team starter. 6'4", tall and an aerial monster, winning 90% of his aerial duels. Big physical frame, coming in at 98 kilograms, offering decent passing skills on top. Currently earns $3 million a year at Leverkusen, so I assume he'd be fine with our current wage structure. Puts him on a 3+1 year deal, so you could sell him to Saudi or whatever after he turns 32 and start to decline. Sell Disasi and Badiashile. I guess Trev is also on the chopping block. Bring in Hato, who's a left centre back who Chelsea have also been linked to from Ajax. And Dean Huijsen alongside Tah. That's a very solid reinforcement for our backline. I like the idea. I think Jonathan Tah has obviously played a lot of senior level football and he's also been a title winner. He's also been a part of a team that did an incredible thing last year with Xabi Alonso. Of course, we can all talk about league to league. How does that change? But I was having a similar conversation with Thiago Silva, right, at a much older age than this, and look how he adapted. So sometimes that's a bit of a silly concern, right? It isn't always as easy. I don't mind it. I don't mind it because, listen, I think that group needs leadership. I think it has talent within it, especially the way it's currently constructed, right? I think Trev Chalobah, I disagree about letting him go. Levi Kowa, I think those two are forming a good partnership. I still think there's a lot of potential in Levi. Fofana is the big question mark, mainly a bit like the Lavia situation, right? Fitness. Like, if he can remain fit and gets through it, I think Chelsea potentially have a very, very good defender. But if he doesn't, another conversation. I think Josh Achimpong is a player that we should be focusing on. I'm not, this is my problem of signing a Huijsen, signing a Hato, signing someone else's. I just, especially younger players, that's not I don't want an overflow of another group of young defenders. I think that's not where my interest is. If you said you can only sign one of Jonathan Tah or Dean Huijsen, I'm probably going to say Jonathan Tah because it's kind of the one area of the group that we don't really have kind of that older veteran player. We don't have anyone currently in the squad over the age of 29, which is mad, right? I think you should at least have one of those players. It's just bizarre to me. And as you say, Champions League experience, German national team, is a winner at a high level, can hopefully bring some wisdom and ready-made experience to a group that kind of desperately needs it. So the fact is, Chelsea could go in there, try and get a free agent deal like they did with Tosin Adarabioyo. They've shown they've done it before, and that experience, maybe, Tah's maybe not, whether you think he's transformative, I guess if you're a more avid Bundesliga watcher than I am, maybe you could, give some detail in the comments whether you think he would be transformative, or he could just be like a really valuable member that elevates our level and brings a more of a structure and kind of just leadership to a group that probably needs it at this point. So that is it for today's show. A much longer one, but I wanted to delve into some of these comments which are really thoughtful and really detailed. So if you want to have your comments read out and kind of we can talk about them, please drop them down below, and also on any other upcoming shows. Hopefully we'll be doing another one this time next week. Please follow, subscribe if you're listening on the podcast feed. Please do give us a positive rating review, helps to get the show to more Chelsea fans' ears, and follow me across socials, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.